Hi, welcome back to my channel. I know this video is kind of long overdue because it is near the end of July, but I want to do the books I've read so far this year since it's kind of the halfway mark. So far this year I read 82 books, which is on track for my goal, which is 150. I'm going to go through all of them. So the first book that I read this year was Imagine Me, which is the 6th book in the Shatter Me series by Tahereh Mafi. I gave this book 4 stars and it's this dystopian fantasy romance. I don't really want to give a blurb for this one because if you haven't read the first book or the rest of the series then you won't really understand. Okay, so next I read the Course of Shadows series, and this is kind of a really unknown romantasy series that I just read because I was reeling after the ACOTAR series and I just wanted some easy romantasy to make me feel better. But it was really just only a 3.5 star, 3-star series for the whole thing. It had an interesting concept where the main character used to be this gladiator who was enslaved, where she had to fight people. So kind of like a really mini Hunger Games. But she was freed, and then she's invited to this academy because she is such an incredible fighter and she's also half fae. I'd sort of recommend this if you just want something short to read. So after that, one of my long-awaited books came out, and that is the graphic novel of Keeper of the Lost Cities. This is my first ever top tier series and I absolutely adore it. I love the art that they did. You can see kind of the style. Yeah, I was so excited for this one to come out because this series I've been reading since I was, I think, 11 years old. So it's been a while. I'm still waiting for it to finish. But yeah, really happy this one came out. And then after that, I read Vampire Academy, which is this paranormal romance. I kind of just looked at it originally as a knockoff Twilight. That will come later in the video. But I actually really enjoyed this series. I loved the main character. She was really tough, and I just love reading about tough main characters, especially when they're girls. So I read the whole series. They were all 4 stars except Spiritbound, which was 5 stars. I really enjoyed that one. Then I read If He Had Been With Me, which is this romance coming of age where the main character is kind of like in love with her neighbour, but then she goes to high school and they're not exactly as good friends because they were best friends their whole lives. They've grown up next to each other, and you've kind of just seeing her growing up and dealing with her depression. And yeah, it's a really interesting one. I gave this one 4 stars. Next we have The Missing and the Fallen Queen, which is book 2 and 3 to Titans, which is a follow-up series to Pegasus, which is this Roman Greek mythology fantasy series. This one was nowhere near good as the Pegasus series for me, which is one of my favourite series. Not a top tier, but still really good. So I gave them 3 stars. Like, it wasn't good, it wasn't bad, it was just a good book. There was nothing that really astounded me. So then I was scrolling on Goodreads and I came across The House of Ash and Shadow. I must have been drawn into the cover somehow. I don't really know why, because in hindsight it's really not that pretty. But I found it at Waterstones and I bought it, and I didn't dislike it. I actually really liked it on initially reading it. I gave it 4.5 stars when I initially read it, but now it's just, once I compare it to other books I've read now, it's just like a 3.5 stars. The main character is cursed that whenever someone touches her, she feels immense pain. Like, she cannot handle it. And so she's cursed with that. And then she meets this one person who's a healer from this separate elite city where these people have these magical powers who can, and she doesn't get hurt. But he freaks out as soon as he knows who she is, and so we kind of find out why, and then her journey. Then I read Nemesis, which I think is a dystopian. It's hard to even give this book a genre. I don't even know how to explain the synopsis. Let me find out on Goodreads. Okay, so every 2 years on her birthday, a strange man finds this girl named Min and murders her in cold blood, but then hours later she wakes up in this clearing and no one believes her. They just think she's having nightmares. But then it all really I don't really understand it. So she starts to see this person again in real life when it's not her birthday, and then there's this asteroid. This book is really just all over the place. So yeah, I gave that book 2 stars. Did not enjoy. Okay, then I read Last One to Die, which is a mystery. And to be honest, I can't actually remember much of it, which is probably a sign that it wasn't that good. And then I read one of my first 5-star books of the year. I don't really count the graphic novel because it's kind of a follow-on to a series I already love. And that was The Exact Opposite of Okay by Laura Stephen. And this book is just all kinds of amazing. So it's kind of a book on feminism and activism, but it's also realistic fiction and coming of age. So I'll read you the Goodreads blurb because mine probably wouldn't be as good. So Izzy O'Neill is an aspiring comic, an impoverished orphan, and kind of, yeah, I don't actually really want to say this. Basically, there's this website that says everything about her sex life, and there's all sorts of terrible images of her, and she's trying to find out who did it to her. It's a 2-book series, so that means afterwards I read A Girl Called Shameless, which is the second one, and which is a follow-up on the blog that she starts to help other girls who are suffering the same thing. That was 4.5 stars, but yeah, this is a really good book, The Exact Opposite of Okay. I definitely recommend it. Next, I read Everything Everything. You might know this from the movie that's on Amazon, which is about this girl who's allergic to everything, as in she can't go outside. She literally hasn't stepped out her house for like 17 years, and then what happens? She falls in love and she wants to step out, and it's kind of just that journey, coming of age romance. 3.5 stars. Not a bad book, wasn't my favourite. I did enjoy the movie though, so if you don't want to read it, I'd recommend you watch it. Next, I read The Tattooist of Auschwitz, which is a memoir, but I think it's still like largely fiction. It's historical, and I gave this one 3.5 stars. I did really enjoy it, but it's also obviously a heavy, difficult book to read, so that made it a bit less fun to read. I was kind of just hoping for something easy, but I think it's really important historically to learn about, and it was a really good book. And then we have The Weight of a Thousand Feathers. Again, I can't actually remember much of what this one is about, or if I'm mistaking it for another book. Oh, okay, I remember now. This is the book about this boy named Bobby, who is basically a carer for his mum who's incredibly sick. And it's realistic fiction. I think at the time I gave this one 3 stars. I'll probably have to down it to 2.5 just because the plot clearly wasn't that memorable. But it's also got a bit of romance and coming of age, and it's a very sad book though, so trigger warnings for that. Okay, next I read a incredible book. This is 4.5 stars, but I rounded up to 5 stars in Goodreads, and that was Imogen, obviously. This is a romance, and I love this book so much. I found this one at Waterstones. I was just browsing and it caught my eye, and it's just so good. So it's about this girl named Imogen whose best friend is queer and all her friends are queer, and she goes to college, and her best friend tells her that she told everyone they used to date, and so she doesn't want anything to become awkward with her friend, so she goes along with it, in the meantime falling in love with someone else. So it's I really liked it, interesting concept, and it's really pretty to read. So definitely recommend this one. And then on the same shopping trip, I bought Girls Like Girls by Hayley Kiyoko, which is a song, I'm pretty sure, which I did not know when reading this. I just bought it because, let's be honest, this cover is beautiful. It really is. I love it. It was a really good book. I gave this one 3.75 stars. There was nothing that really stood out about it. It was just really nice to read and enjoy. Okay, so next I read Colorblind, which is one of those books that has like a small amount of fantasy, that it's not like really fantasy, but there's a magical element, and that is this girl can see on someone's forehead the age in which they're going to die, and so whenever she tries to have a relationship with someone, she sees it, and then she falls in love, and she sees the age is 18, the same age as that girl, and that girl is 17 and she's 18. And so she's trying her best not to fall in love because she knows she's just going to get hurt. And that is the storyline. It's a really interesting book. I'd recommend it. 3.75, I think I said. Then I read Salvage the Bones, which I had really high expectations of because I liked the idea of the setting in Mexico. It's basically about this 14-year-old girl in Mexico where there's a storm hurricane coming, I think it was, and she's pregnant, and she's basically trying to survive. That sounds like really dramatic, but it kind of is. And it's just so dull. Like, there was so much information about the dog, her pet dog. I didn't need to know that much about her pet dog. It was like every other chapter was just talking about the dog. I gave this one 2 stars. In reality, it's probably 1.5, but yeah, I don't really know. And then I read the book that's joined, so far only one this year, that joined my top tier list, which is basically books I would sell my soul to read again for the first time. These books are so incredible, and none of us are going to be surprised. It was The Fourth Wing. I don't actually have enough words to say about this. It is incredible in so many ways. I loved it completely. I got it because, I'm trying to remember, I think I bought this on Kindle ages ago, and then I decided to finally read it, and so I bought my own physical copy so that I could display it on my shelf because I just love it that much. There's basically, I'm sure you all know the synopsis, but there's basically this girl who's conscripted to this academy where you are trained to ride dragons, and you either graduate or you die. So that's the synopsis. And then there's also lots of romance. This is one of the best romances I've ever read. And so, of course, straight away, I read The Iron Flame. I actually only got a copy of this recently, but when I did, I discovered there was art in it, and that just made me so happy. I had no idea. But anyway, incredible follow-up, and probably one of the worst cliffhangers I have ever read, and now I am in pain until January next year when the 3rd book comes out. So, 100% recommend these. So, then I read The Truth and Lies of Ella Black, which is this girl who thinks about herself in 2 sides. Ella, which is her name, and her good self, and then Bella, coincidence, Bella, who is really bad Ella, and she's the one who does bad things, and she's completely separated herself on those 2 sides. So, realistic fiction coming of age. I gave it 3.5 stars. Then I read Ishu and Tani's Guide to Fake Dating, and I don't read many fake dating books with that trope, but whenever I do, I really love it, so I clearly just need to find more, and this one is just so nice. I like it how you skip the awkward messy phase and you just go straight into the fun seeing how they date each other, and of course you know that they're going to end up together, but it's still really nice. So yeah, I gave that one 3.75, 4 stars, like around then. So then I read The Sin Eater's Daughter, which is basically this girl who, by touching someone, destines them to die, I think. Am I remembering this right? Yeah, I'm right. She kills with a single touch, and each week she is forced to kill a prisoner. So yeah, that's the story. And I thought that was like interesting. It kind of gave me similar vibes to Shatter Me, which I really enjoyed. But again, this was just such a letdown. It felt like they were just trying to copy Shatter Me almost, and then they failed miserably. So I gave this 2 stars, probably one of the few romantasy style books that I've ever really disliked. And then I had another 5-star book, and I genuinely never thought I would like Colleen Hoover, but I read one of her books. This is probably one of her least famous ones. It's called Reminders of Him, and I don't actually know how to put into words how much emotion this made me feel, but I literally cried the entire time reading this. And I know that sounds like I'm exaggerating, but there were tears in my eyes the entire time, and I was completely obsessed. I stayed up all the way to like 11 o'clock because I think I started reading at 7, and I stayed up all the way to 11 o'clock finishing this. In my review probably sums it up. In my review, I wrote, so I started this book at 7:30 last night and finished it in a single session, and the majority of the time I was crying. You know when there's that part in a book where you think this is a good section to stop? I couldn't find those sections in this book, and I grew such a strong attachment to the main character that I never wanted to put it down. So that's the basic review. I go into a lot more depth about this one, which again is not normal for me. I barely ever do that. But yeah, this was just a really good book. I really enjoyed it. Then continuing with the good book streak, I actually had a really good section these 2 weeks where I was reading these. I read the House of Earth and Blood series by Sarah J Maas so that I could finally tick off reading all her series. I really liked the first book. It's about this girl named Bryce who is severely traumatized by her best friend's brutal murder by some demon a few years ago, and then she's asked to help to solve it because they don't think it's the person that they caught, they think it's someone other. And then obviously she falls in love with the person she's going with. It's enemies to lovers. We know that's sort of Sarah J Maas style. 4 stars. The next book, 4.5 stars. I only have the next book because I couldn't get hold of the first one, which is annoying, but I'll try to get it. So 4.5 stars purely because of that incredible ending. If you've read this, you know what I'm talking about. I'm so happy it wasn't spoiled for me. And then the last book I also gave 4 stars, but it wasn't as good for me. The ending felt a bit meh compared to the rest of the book, but still really good series, 4-star series. So then I read The Handmaid's Tale, which is this dystopian book. And I don't really know how to explain how I felt about this. I didn't really like the ending. I don't like endings that leave you wondering a bit. So I gave it 3 stars because I enjoyed like the start of it and some of the drama that went on. And I know it's this literary classic almost, but it was kind of just meh to me. If my friend ever sees this, I apologise because she is obsessed with it. And then I read The Recruit. So this is this book I was forced to read in school, which most of us don't like the books we're forced to read in school, but I have a strong passion against this. When I was listing a genre, I had to just put action because there really isn't another way to describe this. It's the very, very middle grade and I just hate the main character and I refuse to even give a synopsis. This book I do not recommend. Then I read Normal People by Sally Rooney, which is a coming of age romance. It's really sad though, like it's dark, this book. The main character doesn't have the greatest life, but I gave it 3 stars and I did enjoy it. It's just a bit, again, like The Tattooist of Auschwitz, just a bit hard to read. And then I read Rebecca, which I love the writing style of this book. It genuinely feels like I was every single setting that Daphne du Maurier described, and I'm going to admit the main reason I read this was because Taylor Swift read it and I wanted to read what she read. So I did really enjoy it though. 3.5 stars, this psychological classic. It gets really interesting. I made a fatal mistake and I read The Selection. You know that dystopian that's kind of like The Bachelor? Yeah, I read it and I do not recommend it at all. It's almost too easy to read. It's such a basic plot line and I just hate everything about it. Forced romance. Yeah, no. So I gave this one 2 stars and the next one after that 1 star. And you'd think I'd stop the series there, but soon we'll see I really do not. So then I went to Scotland, and on that holiday I read the Truly Devious series, and this is a full 4-star series. Completely loved it. Mystery. This girl is really into solving cases and she's invited to this really prestigious school where every child has a specialty, because she wants to solve the murder case that took place there like 70 years ago or something like that. So that's the blurb almost, and I really enjoy it. The only critique I'd have is that it does go across that same mystery for 3 books, and then that can make it feel a bit slow, but it's still really good. My favourite was The 9 Liars, which is the 5th one, and I'm incredibly excited to see what happens in the 6th. So after that I read Some Girls Too, which is an LGBT romance where these 2 girls who are like kind of the extreme ends of the spectrum. One's completely out and everything and the other is not at all, and she is almost this like, prom queen is the wrong word. She does these pageants because her mum kind of forces her to do it because she wanted to do it when she was her age, but then she got pregnant and couldn't, and she says to her child, yeah, well, you ruined my dream, so now you must fulfill it, and you love this, when clearly the main character doesn't. So that was enjoyable. That's 3.75 stars. And then I read the Summer I Turned Pretty series just because it was so cold and I just wanted something that reminded me of summer. Kind of an all-round 3.5 star series. I do enjoy the show on Amazon as well, but I don't know, there's just some things that irritate me with love triangles, especially when they're not really a love triangle, they're like love angles, arrows, yeah. But I still recommend this girl, Belly. She goes to this summer house every summer with her friends, and yeah, and she kind of had a crush on one of them for a long time, but then she gets a boyfriend there, and there's a lot of drama. So then I read the Falling in Love montage, which I really liked. I loved the two characters, they're really nice. It's basically just a romance book. And then I read something on the completely other end, which was Memoirs of a Geisha. And it was really interesting to read. It was a bit long for me. It kind of dragged out. I know this is like part memoir, part fiction, but I did enjoy it. 3.5 stars. I kind of read it because I know it's a really popular book, and I just kind of wanted to be able to say, oh yeah, I know what you mean, yep, read that book. Which is the same reason I continued the Selection series. I don't know why I made myself do this. I read the entire series. I gave this one 1 star as well, which was The One. Yeah, wasn't one of my best decisions. And then I read The Twins of Auschwitz, which is another historical fiction, and this one is incredibly dark. It's about these two twins who are basically experimented on, and it's really sad. So if that's a bit far for you, be careful when reading it. And then I read Check and Mate by Ali Hazelwood, which is a sort of chess rivals to lovers YA romance. I found this one at the shops for £5 and I really liked it. It got me into playing chess, and I've taught my sister how to do it now. She's annoyed because she's 8 years old, so obviously I will beat her every time. But it's a fun book. I liked the main character a lot, and I love the cover. Some people are completely against these cartoon covers, but I love them. I think they're so cute. And then I read Thea again in the Selection series, and I gave it 1 star. The main character is just unlikable, always, and the love interest. It's just not good. And then I read another good book, which is called A Danger to Herself and Others, which is basically this girl in this like mental asylum who's convinced she's not insane, and like she seems incredibly sane, but then you kind of get this unreliable narrator, and it's just, there is a complete plot twist like 3/4 of the way through, and it's just completely like your mind needs like a few days to recover after reading this book. So then I read Faceless, which is about this girl who is going on a run, and then she's running under this tree and it's struck by lightning, and half her face is completely burnt off, and so she is lucky and gets a donor with someone else's, and it's kind of her learning to adjust and live with this completely new face of hers that she really hates and just wants to be back the before, and she thinks of herself as the before her and the after her, so that's really nice. I gave this one 3 stars. It's a realistic fiction. And then I read the final book, The Crown, in the Selected series. I gave this one 1.5 stars purely because that was a slightly good decision I liked the main character making, but yeah, it's just, I don't recommend this series. I don't know why I read the whole thing. So then I read Fallen, and I'm just going to read you my review for this because it pretty much sums it up. If you are looking for a book where the fantasy is incredibly unique and well thought out, then go grab a Brandon Sanderson book and leave this one on the shelf. If you're looking for a comfort book, then I would recommend this one. The characters are kind of basic, the storyline is strange, however it's easy to read. Sometimes I just need to let myself appreciate a simple story rather than one with crazy plot twists and characters that have a full, deep, dark backstory. This one is the knockoff Twilight book, and it might have even been published before, I don't know, but that's just the vibe it gives me. Then I read Activist, which is this feminism book fiction that's written in verse, and I really enjoyed it. It's really quick to fly through, and it's about this girl who's basically got this really sexist school, and she's trying to sort of stop it, but it's a really dark journey, and yeah, it's a really interesting book. I gave this one 4 stars. And then I read The Island, which is a mystery about these, is it 6 teenagers? Yeah, I think so. It's always 5 or 6. They're stranded on an island, and the person who's supposed to be helping them dies. So that's the main thing, and then all their fears are coming true. It's a mystery. It sounded interesting, but I only gave it 2.5 stars. Just wasn't the best. So then I read Where the Crawdads Sing, which is a book that's only grown on me over time. I actually really like this book now. It's a romance, historical fiction, coming of age sort of thing, and it's incredibly sad because it's basically about this girl named Kaya who is left by everyone she cares about her whole life, from her siblings, her mother, her father, her lovers. It's completely sad, but it's also got a mystery element at the end and a really interesting plot twist, and the movie's also incredible on Netflix. I love the movie. There's a few times when the movie and the book are like equal, but this one is one of them. I might even favourite it slightly. I really liked the actor. I think it was Daisy Edgar Jones. So yeah, very much recommend. And then I read A Streetcar Named Desire. I read this book because I want to take A-level English, and this is one of the texts, and I want to be able to know what they are before. So I gave this one 3 stars. And like I said with Yellowface, I love characters that you really don't like but can't help but root for. And then this one definitely has that. So then I read Paperweight, which is about this girl who wants very, very badly to die from anorexia because she feels guilty about something I don't really want to spoil. But it's really interesting, psychological, but be careful of trigger warnings for that. And then I read Leo on the Offbeat, which I didn't realise at the time, but is by the same author as Imogen, obviously. And it's a follow-up to the Simon and the Homo Sapiens Agenda series. So if you know the movie, it's Love, Simon then. But it's really good. I did like this one. I think I like this one more than Simon and the Homo Sapiens Agenda. And then I read How to Save a Life, and if I'm being honest, this is either 1 or 2 stories in my head and I'm not entirely sure which, so I need to check. Okay, so this is the one I thought it was. These 2 girls whose one's mum wants to adopt a baby, even though she's like very, very old, and this other girl who's the one who's almost letting her baby be adopted. She's not born yet because she had... Yeah, I don't actually want to spoil the backstory of her because you find out a lot. But it was good to read, but because I always forget what it's about, I just gave it 2.5 stars. And then I read Know My Name, which is a memoir, and this one is feminism as well. I really like those books. I'm not going to rate this one because I don't really like rating stories on other people's lives that much, because it's like, am I saying how good their life was, or am I saying how interesting it was? Like, if it was a movie, would I enjoy it? It feels wrong to rate it because it's not really fiction. Okay, so then I read What I Couldn't Tell You, which again I often forget, so I gave this one 2.5 stars. But it is like an easy, enjoyable read. There's nothing wrong with the book exactly, it's just forgettable. Okay, so maybe that is something a bit wrong with the book. But anyway, it's about this girl whose sister is in a coma and they think it might have been her boyfriend who did it, but she doesn't know, and the main character has selective mutism, so she can't talk, but she's listening to everyone's secrets pile up, and she's trying to figure out who put her sister in a coma and if her sister will even survive it. However, I can remember The Girls I've Been, which I gave 4 stars, which is this really interesting book that all takes place during a bank robbery, but you find out more and more about the main character's life as it goes on. And she's basically had all these different personas that her mother's forced upon her, where she has to be sweet, or she has to be calm, or she has to be gentle, and all those things. And then I read The Kiss of Deception because I was craving a bit of romantasy, and I actually really enjoyed this. Lots of people say it's kind of like the novella to the next book, but I love scenes where the main character is like just traveling with people. I just love those sorts of scenes. I find them like really easy to enjoy and read. So I gave this book 4 stars, and it is, I see what people mean when they say it's a novella to the next book, which is Heart of Betrayal. I got the different cover because I like this one more, which has a lot more plot, but it's also still really enjoyable. When I finished this, I really wanted to get the next book, but I just haven't been craving to read it, so I might just stop at 2. So I don't really know what that says about the book, but yes. So after that, I reread the Cruel Prince trilogy, because I remember I read it like a year or two ago and I didn't really absorb as much as I wanted to, but now that I've reread it, it is mind-boggling. I love the series a lot because this is the most unique romance, and it's still a subplot. Like, this romance is a subplot, but it's enemies to lovers, but they stay enemies, so kind of enemies and lovers at the same time. It's really interesting, and it's about this girl who's in the first chapter, so this isn't a spoiler, in the first chapter, her father and mother are brutally murdered by her stepfather of sorts, and she's taken to the Fae world where she desperately wants to fit in amongst the Fae when she's older. So like, they're murdered when she's about 5 years old or something, now she's 16, 17, and she desperately wants to fit in with the Fae because they're beautiful, they are strong, they're magical, but because they don't accept her because she's human, she's kind of like, if I can't be them, I will be so much worse. And I love that sort of trait in a character. And then I read another memoir, I'm Glad My Mum Died by Jennet McCurdy, and I really liked this. Again, no rating, but it was really fascinating and it was really well written as well, so I'd recommend this one. And after that I read How the King of Elfhame Learned to Hate Stories, and I've just got to say the art in this book is incredible in so many ways that I actually want to get my own copy just so I can look at the pictures again. I read this one in my school library. Really good follow-up. So if you just stopped at The Cruel Prince, don't trust me, you should definitely read the next one. And after that I read Yellowface. I already gave you a description of this in a video, but it's about this girl who is an author and her friend, rival, frenemy sort of person is a huge author, like, compared to her. And when she dies, she basically steals the manuscript for the book she was writing. And very morally great character, but really interesting. I do recommend. 3.5 stars. And then I read All the Right Places, and this book I have a story to tell, because when I read this, I was doing my school play, and we were doing The Addams Family, and I was actually having to do a really happy scene where I just have to like pretend to be really, really joyous. I read this before, just finishing it, and I was crying. And then I had to go on stage and do this really happy dance, and it was just so hard. My review again, I put the review for this one exactly how I felt. I wrote, I was sure this was going to be a 3 stars, about 70% through, and now I'm a sobbing mess unfit to interact with anyone for the next 200 years. That pretty much sums up how you're going to feel after reading this. So after that I read Graceling by Kristin Cashore. This was again on the list of books that I was randomly picking out, and this one, I liked the premise and I did find it really interesting, but it's just almost a bit too simple. I wanted a bit more development of the characters, because it's a short book, like the pages are quite thin, but it's a short book, so I think I would have just wanted more. I wanted more detail, I wanted more character development, maybe another plot twist or more interest in the setting, because there's a map on one of the pages and I kept having to find myself coming back to it to try to check where locations were, which is a bit annoying. But I gave this book 3.5 stars. So that is all the books I've read so far this year. I very much enjoyed them. If I was going to give my most ones, I'd say The Fourth Wing, I'd say Reminders of Him, Imogen obviously, and the Sarah J Maas ones, those were all really good. So thank you for watching, and please tell me which of these were your favourites, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!